Shana Tova. In spite of everything that faces us in the world, this is still Shana Tova. This is the beginning of a new year. We hope for the best. We look for all the good things, and we recognize them in people around us. We look for Shalom Uvriyut, for peace, for health. We always say Shana Tova Matuka. May this be a year that is good and sweet. May we find in it the things that will enrich us, support us, sustain us through times to come. Times certainly to be filled with challenge, hopefully to be filled with reward also. Let me share with you some thoughts about the two Torah readings for Rosh Hashanah. Readings that we turn to year after year. Readings that challenge and disturb us. Readings that haunt us. Readings of children going on journeys with their parents, finding fear and peril, discovery, and perhaps separation. Perhaps we read these stories to learn how we might do better. How can we avoid some of the challenges faced by our ancestors? What can we hope for? Interestingly, in the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, we read stories that are parallel. They're about the two children of Abraham, Yishmael and Yitzchak. And on the first day, Yishmael is on a journey with his mother Hagar. And on the second, we find Yitzchak, Isaac, on a journey with his father Abraham. Neither of those journeys ends completely in peace. Those journeys haunt us. Let me share with you an old story. It goes back to days perhaps some of us remember, that certainly we have read of. If you remember back in the days of a dictator called Stalin, there were big gatherings in the big square in Moscow. And one day Stalin comes and he holds up a telegram and he says, "Comrades, now I have a telegram, a message in my hand from Comrade Trotsky, where finally he admits, and he says, let me read to you. From Trotsky to Stalin. You were right. I was wrong. I should apologize to you." Short and terse. No kids nowadays know even what a telegram means. But right after Stalin reads the telegram, this little Jewish tailor right up at the front starts jumping up and down, and he runs up onto the platform. And he says to Stalin, "Comrade Stalin, as a Jewish tailor, I am of the same ethnicity, the same people as Trotsky. And I know the language and the way he speaks. And I think perhaps there's a meaning to it. There's a way of understanding his telegram, Comrade Stalin, that maybe I could bring out a little more." And Comrade Stalin, full of the triumph of victory over his longtime enemy Trotsky, says, "Our friend here, he shares the language and peoplehood with Trotsky. Let him read to us and let us understand from him what it was even more deeply that Trotsky wanted to say." And so the little Jewish tailor comes up, holds up the telegram, pulls the microphone down a little bit and says, "From Trotsky to Stalin. I was wrong. You were right. I should apologize to you." Stalin's brow begins to crease with thunder, and this little tailor starts running for the hills, and presumably was never heard of again. The same words, and everything was in the tone, the way that the words were spoken. When I served a synagogue in another town somewhere in the middle of America, the president of the synagogue was the managing partner of a law firm, and he said sometimes the emails circulating was so poisonous, he would put all of the lawyers on an email timeout. He said you can only speak in person and you can use email just to set up appointments. And in these days, in this time of the COVID pandemic. We cannot be together with others so easily. We do too much by email and even more by Zoom, which gives a lot. We can see each other, we can hear each other, but it is not fully being present with each other. And even for those with whom we live, with whom we are very close, the days, the weeks, and the months have passed by. And it's a challenge to us all. How are we with each other? How do we support each other? How do we care for each other? And so in the Torah, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we read that Hagar, following Sarah's instruction, becomes pregnant by Abraham because Sarah believes she is too old to ever bear a child. And Sarah almost adopts the child born to Hagar. And the child grew up, and Abraham held a great mishteh, a great feast, b'yam hinamal et Yitzchak, on the day that he circumcised Isaac. We're reading in Genesis chapter 21. If you have the High Holiday Prayer Book, this is on page 100. But then, V'tere Sarat ben Hagar HaMitzrit asher yalda l'Avraham mitzachek. Sarah sees this son of the Egyptian handmaiden that she had born actually to Abraham was mitzachek, which sounds just like the name Yitzchak, just like Isaac. What was this child doing? One line of interpretation is that he was playing dangerously. He was shooting arrows, trying to shoot perhaps an apple off the head of Isaac, and Sarah was scared for the well-being. But maybe Yishmael and Yitzchak were just playing with each other, because Yitzchak is the name given to the son born to Sarah. And it says that she laughed and she chuckled, and in modern Hebrew today, lesachek just means to play as children. What was happening between Yitzchak and Yishmael? We will never, ever know. But this was bad for Sarah. V'yarad ava ma'ad. And what does Sarah say? Garesh et hamazat ve'et bana. Drive away, send her away, this servant and her son. He's not going to inherit with my Isaac. And this was hard for Abraham, and he prayed to God. And God replies enigmatically. I want to suggest an original reading. This is at the top of page 101. God says to Abraham, don't be troubled by this, about the lad and about your servant. Kol asher tamar elecha Sarah, everything that Sarah says to you. Shema b'kala, listen to her voice. The translation, even in our Machzor, says, do as she says, but that is not what the Hebrew says. It says, listen to her voice. Maybe Yitzchak and Yishmael were just playing. Maybe Sarah is hurt and angry and jealous, and she doesn't want Hagar, her longtime servant, and this son, Yishmael. Maybe Sarah never wanted them to die, to be driven away. She was angry. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. This is making me angry. God says, listen to her voice. But Abraham did what she said. Maybe Abraham got it wrong. And the camps of Yitzchak and Yishmael were separated. How often does this happen among us? How often do we hear too literally? How often do we not hear the pain, the sorrow, the frustration, the depression, the anger in the voice of those who speak with us? How long till we will do what Abraham was told by God? Tishma b'kala, listen in the voice. Listen to what is communicated beyond words. Perhaps that is a little bit about the gift of music, because pure music has no words. We can only listen to the call, to the voice. And we speak about kol shofar. When we hear the voice of the shofar, it speaks without words of brokenness, of hope, and of triumph. Ultimately, Hagar and Yishmael, they never died. And in fact, Hagar was an Egyptian. She was a desert woman. How could it be that Hagar, raised and living in the desert all her life, how is it that she would be in any danger of dying of thirst? When they sat down and Hagar said, I am so miserable, let me not see my child die. When the angel opened her eyes, there was a well of water. Hagar's a desert woman. How did she not know? Because this was about what was going on in her heart, not about the surrounding geology. Our Torah is not a textbook of science or history. The Torah is a guidebook for the heart. And the human heart speaks, and we hope we listen. The Talmud asks, what is it that God wants of us? Can we offer gifts and sacrifices? God says, Kili kol haaretz, the whole world is mine. The Talmud says in 3 words, Rachmana liba ba'e, the blessed Holy One wants only the human heart, because that is the one thing in the world God will never control. I invite us this Rosh Hashanah, between now and Yom Kippur, let us listen more deeply, more carefully. Let us hear what it is our beloved friends and family are truly trying to say to us. And let us look at what we say. Let us look at the tone of our voice. Is our tone kind? Does our tone invite people to respond to us with honesty, with fullness? When we look at each other, do we see the divine in each other? Because we are all made B'Tselem Elohim, every one of us, no matter our station in life, our age, our attainment, our degrees, our wealth. We are all carriers of God's image. When a human being speaks, in some way, it is a little piece of the voice of God. Do we hear it? I believe that God's words to Abraham, Shema b'kala, listen to the voice. Those words echo down to us through the centuries. And if we listen, then our eyes will be open. We will see the wells of water, and perhaps in other ways, we will see solutions to the things that seem to threaten us. Let us look together and, thinking of our tone, wish each other not just with the words, but from our hearts, Shana Tova. May this be for all of us a good year. Shana Tova.